The Iraq War continues to haunt the UK, with lawyers representing hundreds of detainees of that conflict now saying the British government is ultimately responsible for torture so brutal it amounts to sadism. Their testimonies have been submitted to the International Criminal Court, but as RT's Polly Boyko reports, the UK is determined to stop any investigation in its tracks.
Up until now, the International Criminal Court at The Hague had mostly tried African dictators and tyrants, but the ICC has been asked to investigate thousands of allegations of war crimes committed by British forces in Iraq. A 250-page dossier presented by a human rights organisation and a British law firm contains allegations of beatings, of electrocutions, mock executions and sexual assault committed by UK forces. And according to the authors of this report, the finger of blame extends to the very heart of the British government at the time. So the head of the British Army, the former Defence Secretary and the former Defence Minister could face prosecution for what this dossier calls systemic war crimes.
There are many hundreds of cases where the people who've been interviewed and have provided reports about this abuse. And it varies from what people might think are relatively mundane examples of abuse to really quite appalling physical violence.
The report says that British military commanders knew that their forces were committing war crimes and, moreover, that their civilian superiors consciously ignored such information at their disposal. But the UK's Foreign Secretary William Hague has already firmly rejected the suggestion that those at the top here in Westminster knew what was taking place on the ground in Iraq.
We reject allegations of systematic abuse, but where there are substantiated allegations of things going wrong, these things have been or are being investigated. That does not require references to the International Criminal Court.
The position of the British government has constantly been, oh, we're doing enough. The point of this is simply that they still haven't done enough. There are, right now, at the International Criminal Court, two heads of state. One of them, the sitting head of state of Kenya, and the other, the former head of state of Côte d'Ivoire. They're both on trial at the International Criminal Court, not for getting their hands bloody, they didn't do anything themselves, but people under their authority or people they should have controlled were committing the crimes. So if it's good enough for the African countries, it should be good enough for the UK too.
The International Criminal Court has come under increasing pressure to act against war crimes committed by Western countries. It's now up to the prosecutor at the ICC to go through the claims of abuse and to decide whether to call high-ranking British officials into the dock at The Hague. Polly Boyko, RT, London.
Extracts from the dossier have been made public, but most of the documents are being kept under wraps. Still, the witness accounts that have come to light so far are alarming. Now, among the abuses reported are beatings, electrocutions, various kinds of sexual humiliation, and even outright rape. Family members of inmates were allegedly threatened by British troops, and in at least one case, actually harmed, such as one man who described how, after being beaten, his 8-year-old son was brought in and also attacked by an officer. Another witness alleged that during an interrogation, soldiers threatened to rape his sister and arrest his elderly parents. Let's hear now from Andreas Schuler, legal advisor at the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights. Mr. Schuler, your organization helped compile this report. Just how damning is it?
It's very damning, and the difference is that the evidence shows that it's not only about individual and single cases and incidents, it's really a systematic pattern of repetitive acts which occurred, and that's the finding in our report or communication to the ICC. It's more than single isolated incidents.
Well, the UK says it's already investigating all the accusations, and this submission to the ICC is needless. Why then was it filed?
The UK is investigating some single incidents. They have some public inquiries, but they all don't look into the systematic pattern of abuses, which also amounts to higher levels of within the command chain. And that's the difference, which is not under investigation in the UK so far. And after 10 years since the first incidents happened, now it's the time for the ICC to take these high-level cases up.
Well, let's talk about the evidence. Now, the report alleges, as you say, systematic abuse that top brass were aware of or should have been aware of. Now, how sure are you of this?
Well, already in 2004, there were reports by the International Committee of the Red Cross, by Amnesty International, about abuses and mistreatment of detainees in Iraq by British forces. Already in 2006, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court found that there are some incidents which amount to war crimes, and even until 2008 it continued. So this shows that there were already quite early allegations which haven't been followed up by the UK officials to prevent future torture between 2006 and 2008, for example. So there was public knowledge since 2004, 2006.
Okay, there have been a number of attempts to bring the UK military to account for its actions in Iraq. None have worked. What makes you think this will fare any different?
Well, we documented many more cases than were submitted before to the International Criminal Court or to other courts. It's now the time, because the UK had 10 years to investigate, to prosecute the direct perpetrators, but also the higher-ups. In the UK, 10 years, and there are still hardly any prosecutions in the country. So now it's simply the time that international courts have to step in.
Well, there are also, political considerations here, regardless of guilt. Do you believe the UK would actually allow its top officials to be prosecuted?
Well, the UK ratified the Rome Statute, and they are under the same obligations as any other states, and that also includes to cooperate with the court, and they still have the chance to prosecute the people themselves in the country. But if they don't do so, they have to cooperate with the International Criminal Court.
The ICC has a reputation for going after Africans. Would it dare go against a European power such as Britain?
It's the time now also for the ICC, after also 10 years in its existence, to broaden the focus not only on Africa, but also on the UK, but also on states like Colombia, where crimes have been committed and where similar situations occurred, like in the African states. And the ICC, with the new prosecutor since last year, is also now under obligation to look into other regions of the world and conflicts where serious crimes have been committed.
Okay, well, let's talk about the court's authority. How much of it does it actually have without ratification from key powers, including the United States, Russia, and China?
The court has more than 120 member states by now, and that means already on the territory of 120 states, crimes can be investigated and prosecuted by the court. So even if the big states you just mentioned commit crimes in other states which have ratified the Rome Statute, they would also come under investigations. And that shows that if more and more states sign and ratify the statute, more and more also the big powers are under pressure to react to the jurisdictions the court might have if they commit crimes abroad in other countries. But of course, we still hope that also the statute will be ratified by actually all UN member states, including the US, Russia, and India, Brazil, and many more.
Okay, Andreas Schuler, legal advisor to the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights. Thank you very much for joining us.